our world. I'm Van Nguyen.
And I'm Boris Mejia.
We're excited to welcome you to HISD's first ever Global Issue Summit. Inspired by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, these goals are a part of an ambitious global effort to address the problems facing the world today. Issues like poverty, gender equality, youth unemployment, access to quality education, and one that's been on the minds of most today, good health and well-being.
As young students, we need to be on the front line of this effort. All too often, we leave the important decisions to adults without ever trying to come together to influence the decisions they make.
Well, Boris, that ends today. We are at a pivotal point in our society. The change ushered in by COVID-19 is going to have a lasting impact on our society, how we work, how we learn, how we vote, and even the cost of a college education. Change is the only constant. The world is changing rapidly. As students, we can choose to let that change change us, or we can change the world.
And it only takes a handful of thoughtful, committed citizens to change the world. You know why, Van?
Because it's the only thing that ever has.
It's true. In fact, but before we get started on changing the world, we like to thank our partners who have made this possible. Not just this summit, but HISD's larger initiative providing equity of access to study abroad opportunities in high school. And that matters because we can't all afford to travel abroad.
But we also can't afford not to travel abroad. The benefits are priceless. Study shows it helps you level up your academic focus, confidence, adaptability, problem-solving skills, tolerance, interpersonal skills, and your ability to collaborate with people that have different cultural values.
Through HISD's partnerships with the Peronic Foundation, Amigos de las Americas, EF Educational Tours, and AFS USA, the team has raised nearly $250,000 to help HISD students cover the cost of traveling abroad.
We also want to thank Skyline Displays for building this amazing set for us and allowing us to host the summit from their headquarters.
This has truly been a collaborative effort, a great example of the community coming together, both the public and private sector, to create new education futures.
New education futures? What's that? Sounds odd.
Don't worry, we'll learn more about it soon enough.
Well, now that you know what we have in store for you today, let's start off with a message from the Mayor's Office of Trade and International Affairs. We have Jessica Ngo, Jessica Ngo, who is the manager of protocol manager, as well as international affairs and trade. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Van. Hi, Boris. Thank you for your kind introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica, and it's truly a pleasure to be here with you all today. And on behalf of the City of Houston and the Mayor's Office of Trade and International Affairs, I want to thank HISD and all participating partners for putting together such an incredible initiative as today's summit. And to all the students, teachers, and parents watching, I am humbled to be a part of this journey with you all. Welcome to the first ever Global Issue Summit, celebrating citizen diplomacy. And I am also very excited to be hearing from Dr. John Marbrick and Dr. Garrett Olson, who for their insights and extensive research for education as well. And I want to start my message with a thought. Before we gain the courage to go out, explore the world, study abroad, I do believe that we need to be able to understand ourselves, our background, our environment, where we're coming from. And having a good foundation of knowledge about global trade and international affairs will not only help you to understand the world around you, but also from where you're coming from, your city, your background as well. And just a little bit about my background is that I was not born in the United States. I was an international and study abroad student myself. While I'm not going to tell you guys my age, but at around my teenage years, I realized my urge of wanting to go explore the world. And during that time, the closest thing to exploring the world would probably be study abroad. And that chapter has changed my life completely. It has opened so many doors for me, including my amazing position at the mayor's office here today. But I can tell you that it was not an easy chapter with different in culture, the culture shock that came with it. That's why I wanted to tell you today that I deeply understand the importance of having and start building a global mindset from earlier on. Nowadays, whether through study abroad or through researches on your own or from schools, or even as simple as having an open mind and be very culturally aware, these are all actions to help you towards building a global mindset. And having this goal in mind will really help you to create so many unique opportunities for your professional as well as personal development as well. So now I want to introduce to you guys a little bit about our Mayor Office of Trade and International Affairs, that we call MOTIA for short. A little bit about what we do, who we are, and why international is so important for Houston, and how it showcases Houston in the global stage. So at MOTIA, our key functions vary from welcoming heads of state, managing our relationship with more than 90 members of the Consular Corps, and these are Consul General, these are honorary consuls, organizing trade missions from Houston to all around the world, attracting foreign direct investments, leading Houston engagement with international organizations such as the UN, World Bank, Sister City International, as well as foreign government as well. We can even help assist Houston businesses to seek market abroad. Our key goal and mission is to serve as the city international liaison and trade development leader. And as protocol and international programs manager for the mayor's office, I take care of matters regarding to diplomatic protocol, formalities ranging from depending where your guests coming from. We welcome guests, heads of state, president's level, minister level, ambassador level. Each one of them has a different cultural background, and that's where the mayor's office come in to provide an appropriate diplomatic formality and precedent to make sure our guests have a wonderful experience in Houston. In addition to that role, I also take care of cross-cultural exchanges and international programs and events, such as serving as liaison for Sister City of Houston, who is also one of the participating partners for today's summit as well. And there is something that I realized just the other day about Sister City of Houston is that they share a common mission with HISD abroad, is that they both celebrate global diversity and citizen diplomacy. And just think about that for a minute. These common goals and mission really have brought us all here together for today's event. And for my next point, again, you may want to ask why I keep repeating having a global mindset and why having knowledge and foundation in global and international affairs and trade is so important. Basically, it will help you to succeed in an increasingly international environment that we are all living in right now. And I'll take Houston as an example. Houston has one of the most diverse population in the world, where 1 in 4 of our citizens are foreign born. There are up to 145 languages being spoken within our city, and not many people knows those facts. We are known as the global capital of energy, but our economy has diversified over the years to also include technology, innovation, manufacturing, shipping, and having the largest medical center in the world as well. Over the past 10 years, at least 517 foreign-owned companies have announced plans to invest in Houston. And we are also home to 22 Fortune 500 companies. Fortune 500 companies are some of the largest company in the United States. And imagine all the unique opportunities and access to global careers that Houston has to offer. That's why I want to emphasize the importance of, setting up your mind into thinking outward, thinking about global and international situations around you really will open your mind. And I want to close with a quote by the mayor of our city, Mayor Sylvester Turner. He always said that the best is yet to come. whether you will be the recipient of today's scholarships or not, the fact that you guys are all participating in such a world-class competition as the summit here today is you already have your foot at the door. And as someone who had been in your shoes, this is such a significant time in your life. You are finding your place in the world, and it all starts right here, right in the heart of your city, wherever you are right now. So I encourage you to take advantage of this wonderful opportunity offered by HISD and start exploring the world just how I could back in the day. And also to all Houstonians are listening, while you're all out there making a difference, I sincerely hope that you will be able to bring a little bit of Houston to wherever you go. I also want to thank all the teachers, parents, and participating partners for sacrificing your time and effort for building a brighter future for the international and local youth. And again, thank you, Sister City of Houston. Thank you, Myra from Pure NA Foundation, and all of the partners, and especially HISD for putting together this initiative. And to be able to be connected with you guys during this very challenging time that we are all living in right now is already inspiring. And I want to conclude my speech with a special thanks to Kian, our behind the scene man of the whole summit, and his incredible team. So I had the opportunity to get to know Kian for the past week, and I am in awe and inspired by his passion and dedication for the youth and for international as well as local education as well. And to close, I want to share a quote that Kian has introduced to me, which truly resonates with me. And it is never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So thank you so much, everyone. Have fun. Start exploring the world in whatever way that best serve you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. We sure do love Kian. Based on what you said, I wanted to ask, how has studying abroad helped you identify your identity?
Thank you so much for these questions. And this is a really great question. So a little bit funny story at the around my, I believe it was 14, 15. I talked to my parents. I said, Mom, Dad, I want to go travel the world. And they looked at me weird. And it was not an easy conversation, but hey, it was a successful one. And I didn't realize that it would change my world completely. It has not only broadened my knowledge, but also opened my mind and to be so culturally aware about all the environment, all the people that I have met, and you start to develop such a respect for the society that you're living in, and it start becoming part of you, you know, and that truly something that I identify myself with. And the fact that I am able to work in such an international environment, such as the mayor's office, and in a global city as Houston as well, it already further my identification. So I hope that answered your question. It only, and I keep learning every day. The fact that, you know, you study abroad, you never stop at one place. There's always something more for you to learn.
And because you have developed this global mindset, how can students get involved in the mayor's office and continue this journey and kind of learn from you?
Thank you, Van. So, of course, there are different internship programs, not just from the mayor's office, but from so many international organizations within the city that they are living in. It doesn't have to be in Houston, but since we're talking about Houston and I am a lover of Houston, we do have a great internship program at our mayor's office. And I'm more than happy to share the information with you guys, and I'll share that with the organizers. So please feel free to contact me or anyone from my team. We're more than happy to connect you to the organizations that may be of your interest, or if you want to learn from us, we are more than happy to share that internship experience with you guys as well.
Thank you so much. Please look out for my application. Boris, what do you say we queue up our first student speaker?
Sounds good. But first, here's how the voting will work. Now, after each speech, the audience will have the opportunity to rate the speech on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest rating. The 2 students with the highest average ratings will each receive a full scholarship to study abroad in India or Latin America, courtesy of the Pornic Foundation Amigos de las Americas. In the case of a tie, 3 of our study abroad partners will vote to break the tie. The winners will be announced on social media after the summit. So don't forget to follow HISD Abroad on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel, where the summit is currently being live streamed.
Okay, Boris, who's up first?
Good question. Introducing our first student speaker of the day, Cassandra Martinez, a rising senior from Challenge Early College High School. Cassandra will be speaking about income inequality and labor exploitation. Cassandra, please get us started.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. The past few months have been a time of extraordinary change for the world as a whole. We have been brought to the brink of massive economic failure due to closing businesses and a significant rise in global unemployment. On the other hand, Jeff Bezos, CEO of the conglomeration that is Amazon, has only gotten richer, causing speculators to label him as the world's first future trillionaire. Now picture that. 13 figures, $1 trillion belonging to a single man. And to put that into perspective, that kind of money would give someone an allowance of $1 million every single day for the next 33,000 years. That kind of wealth was not and cannot be earned through hours of hard work or an ingenious world-changing process. That money was hoarded through the exploitation of workers across the globe, toiling in sweatshops without proper work regulations or fair wages. Of course, from the comfort of our American homes, we can deny these issues and attribute them to side effects as from our capitalist economy. It's easy to deny our own role within these issues, but the mere existence of radical income inequality and the exploitation of minorities in third world countries today contradicts the core values of humankind. By outsourcing jobs overseas, entrepreneurs tend to hide behind the guise of bettering a foreign nation's economy by bringing in new jobs while solely aiming to obtain cheap labor by paying their employees what are really laughable wages. In China, over a third of the population lives on less than $2 American a day. Oftentimes, these workers are simply trying to escape the troubles of rural poverty, but then are then faced with much deadlier jobs that pose security risks and only serve to benefit the already rich. Made in China has become the slogan for this cruel cycle in which businesses take advantage of the poor for their own benefits and leave them to struggle with the inherent issues that accompany poverty with no safety net to fall back upon. In a world with such developed technology and resources, no child should die from preventable diseases, and yet the world sees about 16,000 of these deaths every single day, according to the UN. The rich are undoubtedly a player in this issue, but they are only allowed to do so with the liberties that our laws grant them. To see real change, the world needs to witness the implementation of stricter work regulations across the board, meaning that no one should be a work mule carrying the weight of the world's industry for a mere 20 cents an hour. The solution lies within each one of us. By not shopping fast fashion, voting for proper working regulations, and supporting small businesses, we can be the change the world so desperately needs. For the 17-year-old girl working day and night to take care of her newborn child, for the 11-year-old working every day to escape hunger, for the 74-year-old woman who has worked every single day in her life but will never live to see retirement, and for the 3 billion people living on less than $2.50 a day, we cannot turn a blind eye to the injustices caused by such a warped and biased system. Thank you.
The top 1% are usually the ones who hold most of the money in the world. And, the way they do it through exploitation of minorities is truly horrible.
Yes, but moving on, we have our next speaker, Faith Allen. Okay. Oh, I apologize. We'll give you 20 more seconds to vote. But going back to the speech, Cassandra's speech, it really does show how your choices do impact the world in ways that you don't even realize.
Of course, you treat others fairly, others will treat you the same way.
Yes, and now moving on to our next speaker, we have Faith Allen, a rising senior from the Energy Institute High School, highlighting underrepresented topics in the conversation around climate change. Enlighten us, Faith. We're all ears.
Hello, everyone. So today I'll be talking about the big issue that is currently plaguing us, which is global warming. In this current situation of COVID-19, along with the entire world being completely in quarantine, the huge issue that's currently being undermined is climate change and how it's very important, how we should be aware of how we affect the world. So the large issue of climate change and global warming not only just affects the environment, but it affects the people around us. With our choices that we make using unfair, overconsumption and overpopulation, it causes more things to happen all around the world, and it causes a bigger problem that's going to be not only affecting us currently, but going to be affecting our future. In 2050, it's currently stated that South Vietnam will actually be underwater based on our choices that we make and how we do things. And so with that, I want to think more about how we can help our future, not just how we can help our world today. We need to think bigger for the future, and not just because of current issues such as racial climates and other things like that, but we need to focus on the bigger world and how we can come together as a society. Coming together as a society, we can do small things that can help the world, such as using cleaner energy inputs and switching to beef, and switching not to using beef, but switching to cleaner food choices can actually help us not with our climate, and help us not only help our future, but help how we are currently. So with that idea, I was thinking we could actually just come more together as a society, and we can actually help the world today by having bigger solutions and having a lot more wider ideas. So we can have cleaner energy inputs, and we can use a lot more safer transportation. We can limit our population growth, and we can overall just be environmentally conscious and aware of how we can affect our people in the future. So with that, I want to close with a quote from Nelson Mandela. "We can change the world and make it a better place. It is in our hands to make a difference." And so with that, I want to say that we can actually come together as a society, and we can stop the huge issue that's being undermined, that is climate change. Thank you.
That we want to minimize the need for people to work so that they can stay at home and keep themselves safe, also their families.
Of course, climate change is incredibly important. The last thing I want, especially in Houston, we live near the coast. I don't want the seas to rise, especially since we live very close to where, we could be underwater, not just any other country. So I think it is a very urgent matter that we should handle. Now, moving forward, we are going to be talking about the poll seems to have finished. So we're going to be moving on to our following speakers. Our following speaker that will be rounding up this batch is going to be Akira Vienna, a senior from Challenge Early College High School. She has found strength in her identity as a woman, and she's here to talk to us about it today. Akira, you have our attention.
Latina, sister, student, woman. Hello, my name is Akira Vienna, and these are all words that describe me. Yet I am most compelled by the final adjective. Maybe it is because of the strong women present in my life, outlining the curves and crevices of the long path of the life that lies ahead of me. Or maybe it is the weight of what it means to be a woman in the 21st century that compels me to identify with the term the most. After all, women in the 21st century, women throughout the past centuries have withstood countless acts of oppression and restraint, and it seems only fair that I honor their pain, struggle, and determination. Today, being a woman for some implies having to challenge the social norm of femininity, and for others, it implies having to comply with the social duties assigned to a woman. And there seems to be no area in between those two choices. The strong determination that lives in every one of us has led to progress. Women today have more economic opportunities. Less women are forced into marriage, and overall, we have more liberty over our bodies and actions. However, this progress has not guaranteed gender equality. Although certain practices have been deemed immoral and unjust, it does not imply that the mentality of each individual that contributes to gender disparity has changed. Society, although maybe not directly, continues to suppress and restrain women from being equal individuals. Many physical restraints, such as being allowed in the workplace, have been lifted, but our society continues to hold a psychological control over women. From advertisements to literature, we continue to see a general portrayal of women and their role in a modern world that outlines and defines who we are supposed to be. This limits our ability to express individuality, and thus many women continue being subjugated to toxic environments and relationships. Once the entire picture of our lives was drawn out for us, the only difference is now we are allowed to color and shade in between the lines that remain from those perfectly painted pictures. The problem is augmented in lesser developed areas of the world, where some women cannot leave their homes without the company of a male figure. This serves as a reminder to the global citizen that although our situation in our respective countries may have changed, we must not forget about those who continue fighting centuries of restrictive norms. We must show to each other what is not shown to us by the rest of society: solidarity and compassion. We must be there for each other. We must persist to live the psychological controls over our actions and grow to live not just as women, but as humans. We must continue demonstrating that the determination that those before us showed, so that in the future, the girls identifying themselves with the term women no longer carry the weight of a pained and victimized individual, but rather correlate the term with liberty and serenity. Thank you.
Thank you, Aritzi, for that inspiring speech about women's solidarity.
You'll now have 30 seconds to rate a city's speech.
You know, on my Twitter feed, I see a lot of women supporting women, and every single time I love it. And whenever a girl compliments me on my hair or my outfit, my heart just flutters because I love women supporting women.
Of course, you know, being able to be out there, especially women now have more opportunities than they ever had before, but there's still work to be done. And the fact that there are times when they can come together and try and support each other, it's really inspiring.
Truly. And also, I will actually be attending an all-women's institution in the fall. Oh. So I'm so excited to be around other like-minded women.
Congratulations.
Moving on. Boris, have you heard of Manifesto 15?
I don't think I have. Tell us about it.
So Manifesto 15 is a charter on the future of education. Our first guest speaker, Dr. John Moravec, wrote it in 2015. It's based on 12 principles. Actually, let me just show you a video that we made.
We believe the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. And this is a quote actually from William Gibson. 1.0 schools cannot teach 3.0 kids. Kids are people too. The thrill of jumping off a cliff by deciding to do yourself is a high you'll never have as somebody else pushes you off. Don't value what we measure, measure what we value. But if technology is the answer, what was the question? Digital skills are invisible, and so should technologies be in schools. We cannot manage knowledge. The network is the learning. And we believe the future belongs to nerds, geeks, makers, dreamers, and nomads. We must break the rules, but we have to know why first. We must and can build cultures of trust in our schools and communities.
In addition to authoring Manifesto 15, Dr. John Moravec also created the Nomads concept. That's Nomad with a K-N-O-W. He's here to talk to us more about his work and how it relates to United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 4, quality education for all.
Afterward, there will be a brief Q&A. You can submit your questions in the Q&A chat box or raise your hand by clicking the hand icon to ask your question. We'll turn on your mic so you can ask your question directly to Dr. Moravec.
And now, please welcome a veritable thought leader in education, Dr. John Moravec.
Hey guys, oh yeah, looks like my video is on and I am unmuted. That's great. Well, instead of looking at me, let's see if I can share my screen here. Oh, I've got too many windows open. There we go. Let's select this one. I have to share, I guess. Hey, so as you guys know, I am a futurist on education a bit, to try to look at the future of work and what we need to do in schools to meet new futures and new future needs. And my name is John, so I prefer to be called John, not Dr. Moravec. And that's because I've never been to the future, so I'm really not an expert on it. So hi, I'm John. And also, if you have any questions later on, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Moravec. And just we can chat that way, or find me on LinkedIn or something. And I'm happy to answer any questions folks may have. So as we talked, I'm working on SDG 4. So I work with creatives, thought leaders, innovators, and learning organizations. And these are like schools and universities, technology companies, and international organizations like the Inter-American Development Bank or the World Bank and UNESCO. To really create new opportunities for equitable and quality development for human potential. And I put potential there in that fancy pink color because most of the time people talk about human capital, and human capital is about developing our talents to do things, to do specific things, or to be deployable to do things. But potential kind of changes it around, where we ask the question, so what do you want to do? And how can we activate your potential to create new things, right? And I think that perspective is maybe just a little bit more exciting. So the thing is that we've been failing to reach SDG 4 globally. And this is not just from me, but this is pretty much the assessment from the international community, that we haven't been making great progress on equitable and inclusive quality education globally. And this was our assessment before the COVID-19 pandemic. So now we have this huge crisis where we really need to make progress in the world of education, but we also have the opportunity where we can take this crisis and try completely new things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my take on the future of working and learning. And I put it all into this really ugly chart that kind of, well, this chart got me a PhD about 13 years ago. But the idea is to talk about the transformations that we ran into from the 1970s until today. So this old paradigm, what really ended in the 1970s, the contemporary paradigm, and the nomadic paradigm, which is what's emerging today. And I need to note that the old and contemporary paradigms are really focused around the world of James Schwartz and Pedro Ogilvy from the Stanford Research Institute. They were given like $2 million just to explore what was going on in the world that time, and so they created these paradigms which I've adapted. But just in general, we've been looking at our fundamental relationships with each other used to be very simple and easy to define. We knew what people did, we knew who people are, but now things are becoming really complex. And I like to say complex, creative, and the word teleological, which is like fancy Greek word to mean that the system is so complex in itself that it creates its own goals and its own outcomes. We used to be organized very hierarchically. And by that, you know, it's very easy to tell who the boss was in an organization, the subordinates, and what people did. You know what the boss was, you know what the secretary was, and the accountants were, and all these sort of things. But now we're seeing organizations that are much more agile, and they're much more intentional in what we do and what they do, and able to organize themselves. Our relationships used to be very mechanical and very much the same way. I offered something, you offered something back in return. But now we're seeking out synergies. What can you and I create together that's bigger than both of us? And our worldview used to be determined for us. By that, I say this over and over in my talks. I really mean that, like if your grandfather was a baker, your father was a baker, chances are you're expected to become a baker and that your last name was also Baker. But now the world is changing so fast that we need to design new professions. We need to design new careers. And we're seeing a whole lot more people these days even designing new last names for themselves, right? Causality used to be very linear, very slow. And when I was about 12 years old, I was a paper boy, went house to house delivering newspapers. So I was able to read the headlines and it's very clear what was going on in the world. It's like A cause B cause C, right? But now change is happening so fast, we can't keep up really. And so from the human perspective, things seem kind of anti-causal, like A is causing D, which is causing B, which is causing N, which is also causing A. And now we've got Donald Trump. How did we get here, right? It's hard to tell. So change process in the same sense used to be very assembly, you know, using building blocks. But now so many more organizations are taking these building blocks and just tumbling them down and building things up from the pieces. Reality used to be objective and absolute, but now it's contextual. It's how do you see the world? And when we talk about intercultural education, the contextualization of reality is very important. And the place used to be local, but now it's much more globalized. And this is also, I think, very much in the conversation that we have today. So when we look at this in terms of, so what does this mean for nomadic schools or knowledge-based organizations? It means that we need to facilitate a whole lot more towards building these relationships, and we have to empower stakeholders, which is not just the people within the organizations, but also the people outside that connect with it. We need to build and enable serendipity, accidental things that aren't exactly planned to take place. We need to enable design. How can we enable each other to create new realities? We have to act, react, and pre-act, and have this sort of agility to change and be capable of reinventing ourselves. We have to be able to craft new applications. And I think most importantly, we need to engage the world. And I think that one thing that we can think about for ourselves as both as educators and scholars and people leading the system, what can we do to build communities and education communities and learning communities that better engage the world? So one of the points in Manifesto 15, and I absolutely love that video. If you guys were intending for me to shed a tear, congratulations, you did a good job. It was beautiful. I say that the future belongs to nerds, geeks, makers, dreamers, and nomads. And nomads is it's a word I made up a while back. We kind of take the word nomad and knowledge and you mash them together. right? So is a nomad of knowledge. And these are creative, imaginative individuals who can work almost anytime, anywhere, and with just about anybody. And they contextualize what they know and apply their skills to create new value, right? So I'm not taking what I know to do the same old stuff. I'm taking what I know to do new things. And when we did a lot of original work on nomads a decade ago, we projected that it'd be about 45% of the workforce this year. I'm not exactly sure where we are because it's hard to measure, but we've got a lot of people working in the gig economy. We have a lot of people adding incredible value within organizations as well. So I think that we about hit that. I think that is nomadic workforce is really about 45% now. I think that's approximately correct. And many people are already nomadic, maybe not by choice. I think that some people are kind of forced to add value in new areas, and others are taking on as opportunity. And so a lot of this is really focused on personal development and the question of, so what do you want to bring into the world? And the question for schools is like, well, okay, great. Well, so how can we help you, right? They're futures oriented and really adapting to technological and social change that is just accelerating around the world. They're focused on their skills and being mobile with their use of their skills, like this sort of anytime, anywhere kind of mindset. And a big question for folks is like, so how can I contribute what I know contextually to solve new problems, right? And I think that key for education is really building an agency and self-efficacy. I'm not gonna have time to talk about that, but we did write about that a bit, and I'm gonna share some of the resources with you that you can access for free to learn some more. So nomads are not restricted by any age. They thrive in flat networks. That is not horizontally with power pyramids and stuff. That we integrate more one-on-one. Nomads are unlearners as well as learners. Nomads use new technologies purposively, not just because we think that we have to use new technologies to do stuff, but because we've got like actual users in mind. Nomads contextualize the knowledge that they have to solve problems. They learn continuously and unlearn continuously, and they learn tacitly and explicitly. So explicit knowledge is like what we can get out of a book, or reading a blog or something. That's things are communicated very explicitly. Tacit knowledge is this learning by doing. It's like riding a bicycle, right? I could write 20 volumes of text on how to ride a bicycle. It's still not going to teach you how to ride a bicycle. You just have to go out and try it, right? And that's the old tacit knowledge. Now you combine this tacit knowledge with explicit knowledge, you get personal knowledge. And that's what makes us really unique, and really unique in the nomadic workforce and so forth, right? Super important. Nomads are driven to collaborate, and they invite sharing, right? That's how you get your name out. It's how you create new value or project that value. And I would say most importantly, nomads are not afraid of failure, because failing is really one of the best ways that we learn. But the important thing is that for each of us together is that we don't create failures. So I wrote a book on this. It's called Nomad Society. I actually edited a book on it. We had a bunch of co-authors. You can go to nomadsociety.com and read it for free. It's also available in Russian and in German, their official translations. And there's also community edition in Spanish. So if you go to nomadsociety.com, you can access this text for free. And also, incidentally, I've got a new book called Emerging Education Futures, which has some follow-up ideas from this, which was published at the end of last year. It's also free, but also makes a nice Christmas gift if you're planning ahead or for somebody in the future, okay? So one of the big questions that I've had, and it's been really eating at me, is that, okay, if as nomadic workers, we're supposed to be different, we apply our own value, our own individual knowledge, why are all of our schools pretty much the same? We have a lot of the same curricula, the same goals and stuff. So if nomads need to be different, why aren't schools different? And this is kind of like some of the idea is that the reality, I guess, that kind of inspired Manifesto 15 is that we've really created a culture of obedience, enforced compliance, complacency, distrust, fear, and anxiety. The best students oftentimes are the ones that are just the best at plain school. But we need more flexibility. We need more mold breakers. We need humility. We need, we need just more love and courage within the schools, and really build that, enable that with their students as well. So we think about this, I mean, because I like to think of things or plot things out in different sort of diagrams and stuff. And so this is a Venn diagram, and that kind of explains this a different way. I'm just simply saying that what happens in education doesn't necessarily match what we need, and that connection point is maybe a little bit too small. There's room for improvement. And too often, I think that if you don't fit into this mold, if you don't fit into playing the system well, I think that too often we're punished, or we think that students, there's something wrong with students, or maybe the student needs to be medicated or something. And I really don't think so. And I think that we need to find ways to attend to the ways that each of us learn in very different ways and aspects. So, okay, so for those of you that can read Spanish, about 9 years ago, co-wrote a book, Aprendizaje Invisible, with a colleague in Chile, Cristóbal Cobo. And this was really a 3D and panoramic view of the changing education landscape, where we were really looking at, well, we're looking at a lot of changes that are going on, but we really put this into this paradigm of looking at as a spectrum of formal to serendipitous education, really operating on the spectrum. So you got formal, non-formal, informal, and serendipitous learning. Like sometimes you just learn stuff by accident, right? And we call this the area between non-formal, informal, and serendipitous learning really invisible learning, where how we learn is not visible. In fact, when we engage in things, the whole purpose or the whole approach maybe not to make the learning part as apparent as you would in a formal sit down and take a class kind of experience. And I bring this up because this is where study abroad comes in. We're in international learning, international education, intercultural education. Because when you go and study abroad, so what do you learn? So many people come back and they say, well, I learned a lot. I came back changed. Well, you say, well, how? And people really don't know how to explain that, or what those words are. And this is where things become really invisible. You've learned, you changed, but you're not exactly sure how. And so in the book Invisible Learning, we really emphasized on the need to make these invisible approaches more visible as much as we can. In fact, more generally, we just don't know what the ratio is between visible and invisible learning. But John Seeley Brown, maybe about 20 years ago, theorized that the ratio is about 5-to-1. So for every 6 things that we learn, only 1 of those is actually informal learning, but 5 of them were through invisible and non-formal and informal ways. I just also want to shout out some kudos to some places that are really looking at this around the world. We've got the Nomads Business School in Amsterdam. I think it's really cool. There's a school built on the Nomads concept in Amsterdam that's really focused on, so what do you want to bring into the world? And so they bring in students from all over the world to engage in 6-month learning opportunities. There's a Shibuya University network in Tokyo. It's created by a 27-year-old guy who is so fed up with Japanese higher education, he created his own university network. And it's a network. It's just connecting people together. And in a similar way, E180 out of Montreal is just they built a technology platform to connect people one-to-one together. So what could we teach each other in very smart ways? So it might be like, how do you travel the world for $10 a day? Or how do you build a business? All these sort of things, but it's connecting people in very new ways. And then you got the Outliers School in Latin America, which is kind of like a traveling circus of a university type experience, going from country to country and in both rural and urban areas to do a lot of design and development work that I think is really exciting. And then of course there's Manifesto 15. So I don't have much time and there's no space for this. You guys already brought that up. Check it out at manifesto15.org. We've got our 12 points on there. And I really crafted this to not just share kind of like my vision for how we can move forward, but also to help inspire others. So I encourage you to build your own manifestos as we look towards building new education futures, and please do share them alike. Again, well, we've got a little time for a chat or contact me on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever. So thanks, and yeah, love to hear your questions.
For that thought-provoking presentation. We're now opening up our Q&A. You can submit your questions through the Q&A function, or you can raise your hand and we will turn on your mic so that you can speak. Our first question of the day is, what exactly does the term new education futures mean?
What does new education futures mean? I think it just means that we need to think of something different, the new part, and education futures. And this is a really important distinction because we haven't been to the future yet. Nobody knows what's coming, especially the further we look out. And so I think we have to plan for plausible futures in the plural. What are different scenarios that we might have, and look at some of the better pathways that we can get towards the outcomes that we would desire. Is pretty much what we mean by that.
All right, thank you. The next one one of our callers has his hand up. Asma Hassan, you're on.
Can you speak up? We can't hear you.
Yes.
We'll get back to you in a moment. Boris, do you have a question for Dr. Moravec?
Yes, actually. I wanted to ask you, how do we help you spear out this movement?
I'm sorry, what was your question? How do you help me spearhead the movement?
Yes.
You know, I think that the best way that they can help is to engage in conversations with family, with neighbors, and engage people in conversations where we're all equals, and just kind of think about, like, so where do we really want to be as a community? What's it going to take to make this stuff happen? And then share with others. Post on Facebook, post elsewhere, start a Medium blog or something, but share that stuff out. And I think that's one of the best ways to make this stuff happen as a starting point. And then see what opportunities emerge.
Thank you. Let me make sure. Let me see the Q&A. Okay, in the Q&A chat, there is a question posted by Anonymous. It says, what does it mean to contextualize knowledge?
Oh, right. So when I'm contextualizing knowledge, it means that there isn't maybe one universal application of what I know to do everything. And that I'm able to take what I know into new circumstances, new situations, new businesses, and apply what I know to do things maybe a little bit differently.
Okay. I think it is time for our next round of student speeches.
Stepping up next to the plate, we have Akira Bungi, a rising sophomore from Heights High School, speaking on the importance of being a global citizen in the interconnected world. Akira, the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Akira, and I'm not sure have I just started. Hi, I'm Akira Bungi, and by the time I'm finished speaking, approximately 10 more people will have died from COVID-19. Despite the challenges it has brought upon our world, this pandemic is shining a light on a wonderful part of humanity. Our inherent ability to unite in the face of a crisis that affects us all and overcome it. Every day, we hear about new heroes across the world playing their part in this fight. These heroes are acting as global citizens by taking action, not just for themselves, but for everyone around the world affected by the coronavirus. As global citizens, we understand that everyone on this planet is equal, interconnected, and dependent on one another. We recognize that we are human above all else, above the color of our skin, above the amount of money we have, and above the people we love. We know that the only way we can truly face obstacles as great as this pandemic and move forward as a global society is if we all work together, ignoring the borders that divide us, and share our knowledge and wealth to achieve our common goals. Goals such as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which could ensure that everyone around the globe has access to basic living necessities, as well as opportunities to improve their lives, while also protecting the planet that sustains us. Global citizens know that every country is capable of working together to achieve these goals, and that the benefits of doing so greatly outweigh the costs. The key to reaching these goals is a global education curriculum that creates more global citizens and prepares us for life in a global world. One that teaches us valuable life skills, like how to filter information to form articulated, informed opinions and decisions, how to listen to other people and to understand their words from different perspectives, how to civilly resolve conflicts through negotiation, compromise, and creative problem solving. How to love learning, be openly curious, and confidently ask questions. Schools rarely teach these skills directly, and there are few opportunities for practice during formative years. We, as human beings, are all equal and should be heard, understood, and treated as such. This fundamental idea is crucial in fostering cooperation and global-mindedness. By collaborating and educating future generations in the skills that foster more global citizens, we will overcome this pandemic and any obstacle we may face in the future. We will improve global prosperity, first through the Sustainable Development Goals, and then through any and all endeavors that may follow. Today, it is thanks to the teamwork of global citizens actively fighting this virus in hospitals and labs, or even by staying home, that in the time that I've been speaking, approximately 132 people have recovered from the coronavirus. Global citizens will lead the way in creating a better world for us all. I want to be a part of that world. That's why I'm striving to be a global citizen. Are you? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akira, for that wonderful speech.
You'll now have 30 seconds to rate Akira's speech, which was really important, especially considering the times we are in now. Collaboration and working together is extremely important by not only supporting each other and creating new solutions, but also ensuring that our mental health and our love for one another is still fostering and continuing to blossom.
Of course, especially in this pandemic that we are currently facing, we may have grown more apart as far as physically, but digitally, we have been more connected than ever before, thanks to this crisis that we have all been encountering.
Yes. And even though Boris and I don't know if this is 6 feet apart, but several feet apart, we really have grown close through this project.
Our next speaker now is going to be Alexis Favello, a rising sophomore from East Early College High School, will present his view on the topic of climate change. Fire it up, Alexis.
Okay, so I'm Alexis, and I'm here to discuss climate change as a very important UN sustainable goal and how it is essential that we start recognizing it as a huge issue. When most people hear the words global warming, they dismiss it as a concern and think that the world getting warmer by a few degrees won't affect them at all. That's not the case because global warming but that's not the case because global warming is not as simple as it seems. While this term might only relate to the planet warming by temperature getting a little bit warmer, it will have drastic effects with other aspects of the ecosystem and in turn our lives. As the world heats up, our planet's oceans rise due to glaciers melting and releasing fresh water into the oceans. This leads ocean salinity levels to change, therefore also disrupting ocean currents that rely on different ocean salinities. Why does this matter, you may ask? Well, those currents transport zooplankton and other organisms that feed all of the fish we consume. So if they aren't being transported, they die. So the fish that consume them, and all the organisms in the ocean that consume them will then perish too. Then the ocean ecosystem will completely start falling apart since it all relies on each other. And as the ocean ecosystem and the land ecosystem are connected, the land ecosystem will start falling apart too. And then people all around the world would then be struck with famines, water shortages, and more extreme weather patterns, and a planet unfit for life. Humans would then have the same fate as the ecosystem. They would perish as well. This seems grim, doesn't it? This is what our future holds if we do not address global warming and accept it as an issue that we all must help solve. First of all, we need to address what causes global warming. This, of course, is due to high levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The carbon dioxide, and methane. They cause the world to warm by trapping the heat from the sun, trapping it on Earth, and not allowing it to go back into space. Therefore, to stop global warming, we need to stop or greatly reduce carbon dioxide emissions and methane emissions. We need to invest in green energy and stop using fossil fuels in order to become a more sustainable species. We as a whole need to unite and demand for action by our governments and world leaders. Only then, by becoming a more sustainable species, will we be able to ensure this planet is still here for future generations. After all, this is our only planet and we have to protect it. We don't have any redos with this planet. Especially right now with the whole situation of coronavirus, like people are forgetting about they're forgetting about climate change and they're focusing more on the actual disease. Like global warming is happening right now, and right now some people say that it's getting not as bad because not as many people are traveling, but this is just temporary. It's gonna go back up. So we just need to unite, and all of us need to know that global warming is a real issue, and if we don't solve it today, it might not be solvable in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis, for your insightful speech on climate change.
And now you will have 30 seconds to rate Alexis's speech. And wow, yeah, exactly. Like global warming has currently been an issue, and it's something that most people don't put a focus on, mostly because it doesn't seem like it's something immediate. It seems like it's over time. If something's not happening right now, at least if it's happening not in the short term, people generally don't try to pay attention to it, and that's a problem.
And I know we joke around like, what's the point of going to college if the world's going to end because of climate change and other things? But these things are important, and to actually address it is even more important. So yes, we can joke around, but there are more pressing issues and we can take action. Our next speaker is Jocelyn Regale, a rising junior from the High School for the Performing and Visual Arts. Jocelyn is going to talk to us about the defining qualities of a global citizen. Tell us what it means to be a global citizen, Jocelyn.
Hello, I'm going to be touching on the Sustainable Development Goals 3 and 4. When I first thought of being a global citizen, I thought of a well-traveled person. Well, I've traveled, I thought to myself, Japan, Uganda, various European countries. I knew that I hadn't seen it all, but I've seen quite a bit. It was only when I contemplated what I'd experienced overseas and even in the States when I was finally able to understand. I saw the same problems around the world as I had seen in my neck of the woods. The differences were brought up in places where certain issues had been supported or neglected. Following my train of thought, I realized that I wasn't necessarily a global citizen because I wasn't actively participating in the betterment of the world. A global citizen is someone who considers themselves a civilian of the world, transcending borders, languages, and labels that we often put before our humanity. A person whose priority is global concerns such as poverty, climate change, and education, and actively spends their time to fulfill their goal of making the world a better place. Being a global citizen is the consideration of mankind. No, I'm not just talking about your neighbors or your best friends, but the child in Flint, Michigan who doesn't have access to clean water, or the woman in Bangladesh shunned because of her acid attack wounds. As I was further delving into my research, I heard the quote by Hugh Evans, co-creator of the Global Citizen Music Festival. Quote, "Why should anyone have to live like this when I have so much?" End quote. We have grown progressively more interconnected and interactive through the spread of information via social media. The world's triumphs and atrocities are available at the press of a thumb, a click of a mouse. Yet we remain immobilized, ignoring outcries for help. Especially during this era of coronavirus, we must rely on each other, not just on a local level, but on a global scale. We cannot isolate ourselves from the rest of the world, and we cannot say that it doesn't affect us, so it doesn't matter. This happened during the Ebola outbreak when many considered that it was just a Liberia or a Sierra Leone issue. The problems that we face here in Houston, Texas are the same problems that are faced in other parts of the world. The dangerous mindset of only tending to your own garden ends up hurting everyone. Mindsets that seek to include local viewpoints to benefit human developments around the world, however, prove effective in solving global issues. This mindset must be learned. Education in classrooms around the world should provide in-depth insight into current global issues and events and concerns to open students' minds. These new global citizens are the only ones who can provide effective solutions for the world's issues and preserve its many riches. The mobilization of these new innovative minds must come quickly. Many a time we think of these problems as unchangeable, implausible. We should encourage others and ourselves to do the unthinkable, turn short-term excitement into long-term passion. We must invest in our world. Only then can we reach an attainable goal to improve the well-being of mankind. Undertaking a global perspective increases collaboration and unity under one name, human. Thank you.
And you will now have 30 seconds to rate Jocelyn's speech.
Honestly, she has a big point. When it comes to being a global citizen, we also have to think about what are our responsibilities. When we're talking about what is it that we need to do for the world, we also need to think about what responsibilities we have for the world. And Jocelyn always brings up really good points about it, that this world is ours and we have to take care of it.
And that goes for every other message that every participant has stated today, whether it be about the economy, the environment, or just, having conversations with one another. Respecting one another is the most important thing. And now I have an interesting statistic. 70% of student travelers come from middle to upper income households. Now, compare that with the fact that 79% of HISD students come from economically disadvantaged families. That means that it's very likely that many HISD students will never travel abroad.
Which is why HISD's partnerships with AFS USA, the Pernick Foundation, EF Educational Tours, and Amigos de las Americas is so critical. Together, we're expanding equity of access to some of the most exclusive and impactful learning opportunities.
Our next guest speaker will talk to us more about these numbers. She has over 25 years of experience traveling abroad with students, and the experience has afforded her a unique perspective.
Just like before, there will be a brief Q&A afterward. You can submit your questions in the Q&A chat box or raise your hand by clicking the hand icon to ask your question. We'll turn on your mic so you can ask your question directly to our guest speaker. We want to hear your voice.
And now, it is my personal privilege to present a woman with the title of President. Please welcome President of the Denver Public Schools Board of Education, Dr. Carrie Olson.
Thank you so much for that wonderful welcome, Boris and Van. It is an honor to be here today. Thank you so much to EF Tours, to Chelsea Mercer and Jenny Williams. Thank you to Kian Zaire for organizing all of this. And thank you to all of the students and panelists who are here today. It's really inspiring to hear from all of you and hear the student speeches. I think our future is in great hands. My name is Dr. Carrie Olson, and I taught in Denver Public Schools for 33 years. 25 of those, as Van mentioned, were spent traveling with over 800 students. And during that time when I was traveling, my brain started thinking, what am I seeing about education? Sort of back to John's point about what is that education that we don't seem to be learning in a book or don't seem to be testing? What are students learning, and what can I learn from what my students are learning about traveling outside of the classroom? We travel to Washington, D.C. and Europe every year. with students. And so from that curiosity and talking to my students, I decided to get my PhD to research that. And it's one of the most meaningful things I've done in my life. And I understand that after this webinar, you're going to be, or after this symposium, you're going to be getting my webinar that delves into my research. But I'm going to give you a little bit of the overview of my research right now, just so you can get an idea of some of the highlights from some of my students that I'd like to call out today. And I'd like to thank you for your interest in educational travel. Now more than ever, I think it's important for us to be able to be thinking about global issues. And we are all global citizens, as Jocelyn just mentioned, and what we do with that being global citizens is really important. I'd also like to thank all of my former students with whom I traveled, especially America, Lucas, Angelina, Kim, Elliot, Camila, Lilac, Laura, and Beto, who you're going to hear me talk a little bit about today. So what I did when I decided to look at what is the meaning of educational travel, I looked at quantitative research. So what that means is I looked at what is happening with test scores, with attendance, with suspensions, with graduations, with GPAs. What did all of those numbers mean? Because being a teacher, I knew that if I didn't look at data, nobody was going to listen to me in our data-rich culture. But then I knew that I didn't want it just to be based on data, because my students in my low-income inner-city school in Denver were always being judged by the data and always being told what they couldn't do based on their test scores, attendance rates, and their income status. And I saw something different in my students. So then I followed that up with a qualitative part where I interviewed my 9 students. And what they told me about education really, and education and travel, has really changed how I think about how we educate our students. And it's really important to note too, there's a lot of research being done that if students don't get a chance to travel when they're in middle or high school, they are less likely to travel when they're in college or actually travel at all in their adult lives. So I think it's really important for all of us here today who are thinking about some form of travel with students before they graduate to think about how can we help students. And of course, my lens comes from a culturally responsive point of view. I based a lot of my work on Geneva Gay and Zaretta Hammond, Lisa Delpit, Gloria Ladson-Billings, Sonia Nieto. If you haven't read any of those authors, I highly recommend them. They give a lot of great ideas. So what I did is I took a lot of their ideas about how to make educational travel, or how to make education culturally responsive, and I added an overlay of educational travel based on my trips. And what I'd like to do today is share with you some of the words from some of my students. One of the things that my students told me, all 9 of them when I interviewed them, is they felt like they did better in school because of travel, and travel made them want to read more. This was resounding across all of the interviewees that I had. They said because they knew, for example, they were going to go to Washington, D.C., they were more likely to pick up a book to read about Washington, D.C., and they thought that that then helped them increase their vocabulary, increase their reading levels, and increase their academic knowledge of the world. Many of them said that they got excited to read about, for example, the Louvre in Paris or the Eiffel Tower and understand a little bit more about the history. So then when they were more engaged in wanting to read, it carried over into all areas of their life. They started thinking, what does school have for me? Some of them said even through high school, they remembered that lesson they learned in middle school of wanting to read something and recognizing that school had that for them, that wasn't something that was outside. In fact, America said that was a validation for her, that she recognized that when she worked really hard to understand something, she could see how much her schooling was increasing. Another one of my participants, Camila, says that travel changed the trajectory of her life. And this was something that I heard over and over again. She said that she believed because she traveled to Washington, D.C., she scored higher than what was expected of the students in her neighborhood. She felt like travel educated her on so many topics, inspired her to read more, similar to what she reported for everything related to travel, except for science. She said that, and this is another thing a lot of my students said, is that they didn't feel a connection to their science teachers through middle school, so they didn't have that same level of wanting to understand as much as they did for reading, writing, and social studies. As far as their grade point averages, One of my students, Camila, said that she thought that the grade point averages were higher throughout middle school and high school because the students who traveled understood how to plan for something for their future. They understood that travel doesn't just mean you show up and you go on a trip, but you think about something for your future. You think about how you're going to get there, and that it's all something we all do together. And having adults who support you was really important for a lot of my travelers. And for all of the teachers watching today and all the adults involved in travel, I can't overemphasize that. Many of my students said that they could hear adults' voices even in high school a couple years after they had traveled with our chaperones in middle school. They heard them saying, you need to get going on this. You need to keep working. And they realized that they had people who would support them, and they were more likely to talk with some of their teachers as well. Students who travel are also more likely to just feel engaged in learning overall. Some of them talked about they felt like they could talk to adults better because they had gotten to know some adults on the trip. So when they were in high school, they felt more like they could approach their teachers. One of my students, Elliot, said that he started thinking, hey, there might be something to learn at school today. And I think that goes a little bit to what John was saying in his presentation, that sometimes learning in school feels a little disconnected from what students really want to learn. But a lot of my travelers said that because of the trips, they felt like they could show up and there was going to be something that was there for them to learn, and that they were connected to something bigger than themselves. One boy said that he did not want to learn anything about art. He didn't want to go to the art museum in Washington, D.C., but a lot of us chaperones on the trip pushed kids to try and do something that was a little bit out of their comfort zone. And he said he liked it so much that when he was in Paris, he wanted to go to the Louvre and he wanted to see art, and he wanted to go to the Pompidou Center, and he wanted to see how art had changed. And now he works in a billboard company, putting up billboard signs across the city. And he says he talks to his fellow co-workers about the aesthetics of billboards across the city, and it gives him a sense of empowerment to be able to have that. A lot of my students also said that they were empowered by the trips, and it gave them a desire to graduate. She said Lilac especially talked about how travelers worked harder at everything because they recognized that they had the confidence and the agency to make their dreams come true after having it done so for the trips. Coming from a neighborhood where everybody was at or below the poverty line, they recognized that it was a family venture to be able to work all together to make the trips happen. And they recognized that once you come together, there's a power in the collective and a power of the family to be able to make things happen. And they remembered that, especially in high school when things got tough. An interesting thing is some of my travelers tended to get suspended at a higher rate than students who didn't travel. And a lot of them talked about they just felt so empowered from traveling across the nation or to Europe that they had an increase in confidence, and they had an increase in thirst for knowledge and what was being offered in high school. And when they didn't find that, or they didn't find the connection that they had in middle school, they felt disengaged, and then they ended up either acting out or not going to school as much, and truancy at that time led to more suspensions. Another one of my students mentioned that it led him to think about new ideas. And with those new ideas, he started getting what he called brain food. And he said that all of this brain food helped his learning just sort of start to fall together as he learned a little bit of something here, a little bit of something here, things he never thought that he would want to learn about before, how the government works not only in the United States, but in Europe. And then he felt that it all started to come together, but because he had been exposed to all of this. And I touched a little bit on this briefly, but it was so much, oops, and I know that's my 10 minutes. I set a timer for myself, but it's really important to think about the families. I know our very first speaker talked about how when she first talked to her family about traveling, she said, oh, it didn't go poorly. But a lot of my students, when they first talked to their family about traveling, it did go poorly, and their families didn't want them to travel in the beginning. So we made it a family affair when we held meetings for the trips. We served food, we had it in all the languages. I'm fluent in Spanish, so we would translate the meetings. If we had Vietnamese speakers or Somali, we made sure that we had translators there to be able to welcome the families in their native language and answer all their questions. And I think it's really important for all of us to remember that all of us here today are being called upon by the students who are present, by my participants in this trip to create a more just and equitable world of travelers. From my 9 students, I learned so much about how to make equity in travel a reality. And it's up to us, the leaders of student travel, to create a place where students, like one of my students, Laura, says, you asked me to go and I felt welcome to go. Nobody had ever asked me before. How many Lauras are we missing by not asking? Where students such as my student Lucas can make these connections to learning and have the confidence to say, I understand this. We're rebellious students. I think one of my students, Camila, was so rebellious, and she took all of her energy to make her dream to stand at the top of the Eiffel Tower come true. And other students, like my former student Kim, who only had 1 pair of shoes a year, and it was her dream to be able to travel, and she ended up going on 2 different trips. It's up to us to pack our bags with all of the tools that we know how to do and help students be able to travel far. So I know my time is up, so I'm ready to take some questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Olson. And the first question that we have here is from Rafael Sarango. He says, how do we best approach the equity and accessibility to travel, especially for those students who need it most, not only the quote unquote good students?
That's a great question. In fact, a lot of my travelers were what other teachers would have called rebels without a cause. And I think one of my students, Laura, was a great example of that. In fact, when I went to the student advisor and said I wanted to travel with Laura, he said I was out of my mind, that I wasn't going to get her to the corner. So I think the most important thing is to offer it to everybody who you think might like to travel and the ones you think might not. One of the things that we did from the very beginning is we said we will never create barriers such as GPA, your grade point average, attendance or suspensions rates, a barrier to travel. So if kids came to us and they were not doing well in school or they had behavior problems, we sat down and talked to them and talked to their families and talked about what's your dream and how can we help you. Adult advocates who get to know children and create that strong relationship and get to know their families is the best way to do it. So think outside the box. Some of my best travelers on the trips when things didn't go well were some of my students who were rebellious at school, and some of my worst travelers were the kids who had straight A's and were the gifted and talented students because they always wanted things to be a certain way. Not always true, but I think it's really important to keep your mind open and encourage students.
Thank you, Dr. Olson. We have one more question. It's from Anonymous. What advice can you give to a person who is kind of scared to leave their family and study abroad?
So that's also a great question, because a lot of that happened to a lot of my students. They would say, I'm afraid, I'm actually scared. And I would use the quote, do one thing a day that scares you. And I would remind my students of how many people have gone before them. And I would also tell them, think of the last time you did something that you didn't think you would be able to do, and you did it. What skills did you use to help yourself overcome that? So think about challenging yourself. Look inside yourself. This is your life. This is your dreams out there. Go get it. Like, you need to look at what do you really want for your life and challenge yourself. Also, don't ever underestimate the power of talking to your teachers, your parents, your counselors. Anybody who you have as a trusted adult, even some of your friends. Some of my students were deathly afraid to travel, but they also had that wanderlust inside of you. You all know on this call what I'm talking about, because you're all here because of travel, right? You see a picture or you watch a travel video and you're like, I'm going there next. If that's your dream, think of times that you were afraid to do something and what did you do to overcome that, and apply that to your travel. I also would like to say that at the end of my webinar, I have all of my information if you'd like to connect with me more, ask me more questions. I know we don't have a lot of time today, but I love talking about travel and I love talking about my students. And it's so fun now. A lot of my students are on Facebook and they're older, and we talk a lot about what travel continues to mean for them as they marry and have children and travel with their own kids. It's a cycle that keeps repeating.
Thank you very much, Dr. Olson. Now, it is time for another round of some rousing student speeches.
We have another middle schooler here to enlighten us, Boris.
Man, they start us so young these days, man. I find it inspiring, personally.
Okay, old man. Ritika Gupta, an 8th grader at Lanier Middle School, is about to inspire us all. She will be delving into the 5th UN Sustainable Development Goal, gender equality, and how it can be achieved. Take us there, Ritika. Mic is on. One moment, we're experiencing some technical difficulties.
Yes.
Can you try now, Ritika?
Hello?
We can hear you.
You can hear me, right?
Yes. Can you start?
Sorry about that. All right, so everyone knows that icebergs are melting or that our oceans are full of plastic. But do you know that 89% of women experience violence in the streets of Brazil? Or that only 18 out of 173 countries have specific legislation addressing sexual harassment in public places? If you think that's bad, then 1 in 3 women experience violence at some point in their lives, with around 1 in 10 women experience sexual violence at some point in their lives. However, this isn't just happening in the streets or public places. It's also happening in the workplace. In 2013, the global employment to population ratio was 72% for men, but only 47% for women. Even in peace talks, only 4% of signatories in 31 major peace processes between 1992 and 2011 were women. 2.4% of chief mediators, 3.7% of witnesses, and 9% of negotiators were women. You might be saying that, well, we fund organizations that are supposed to deal with this, but only 6.9 organizations receive funding from UN Women, with only 1 in 10 receiving funding from donors, governments, and international NGOs. You might be asking, how are we supposed to fix this? Well, to start, we could draw more laws and legislation revolving around women. In Central America, UN Women Support helped both El Salvador and Mexico to establish legal improvements that determine femicide as a criminal offense. Not only that, but they helped add measures to prevent and punish femicide. We could help them expand to other countries. Not to mention, we should also make legislation asking for wage requirements. And if the wage gap between men and women were evened out, we could produce $28 trillion towards the world's GDP. We should not forget about educating women, as women make up 2/3 of the world's illiterate population. Governments need to make more opportunities for women's education, such as women conferences and free schools. We also need schools that are closer to villages, as in places such as Pakistan. A half-kilometer increase in the distance from the school to home will decrease a girl's enrollment by 20%. Governments need to make more opportunities for women in role-making decisions, as in Bangladesh, only 0.2% of women are chairs or heads in rural councils. We need a further precise requirement of how many employees need to be female. Children, both male and female, need to be brought up equally by their parents so they have equal opportunities. Women like Greta Thunberg, Zia Bastida, and Brianna Fruin are leading the way towards more impartial and sustainable solutions to climate change. Let's take care of them as they take care of us. My name is Ritika Gupta, and I'm talking about Sustainable Goal 5. Thank you for listening.
You'll now have 30 seconds to rate Ritika's speech. Did you know Malala, a very prominent woman leader, actually graduated from Columbia a couple weekends ago?
Really?
Yes, representing class of 2020.
Class of 2020 is honestly a great class right now to be in.
Yes, and with the rise of even more prominent women leaders, the fight against violence against women has been even stronger. And I can't wait to see all of the new women leaders that are in our audience today 10 years from now.
Of course. Now, our next speaker is going to be Nusaiba Arif, a sophomore from Sharpstown International High School. We'll be mixing it up a bit. She will be addressing the Bengali language movement. More so, she will be doing her entire speech in Bengali. Van, do you speak Bengali?
I wish. It's a beautiful language. Some say it's a language of selfless love, and it's spoken by nearly 250 million people, making it the 7th most spoken language in the world. If you don't speak Bengali, don't worry. We'll provide subtitles. Please turn on your closed captioning functions.
Nusaiba, school us on the Bengali language movement.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nusaiba Reid from Sharpstown International School, and today I'll be giving my speech in Bengali for the topic of raising awareness on the Bangla language movement. উপস্থিত সুধীবৃন্দ, শুভ অপরাহ্ন। সর্বপ্রথমে আমি HISD ব্রডকে আমার আন্তরিক ধন্যবাদ ও কৃতজ্ঞতা জ্ঞাপন করছি আমাকে এই গ্লোবাল সামিটে এসে কিছু বলার সুযোগ করে দেওয়ার জন্য। আমি আরও বিশেষভাবে ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি আমার শ্রদ্ধেয় শিক্ষক জনাব জন সিগ্রেনকে আমাকে এই প্রতিষ্ঠানের সাথে পরিচয় করে দেওয়ার জন্য। আমি আজকের এই শুভ অনুষ্ঠানে উপস্থিত হয়েছি আপনাদেরকে আমার মাতৃভাষা উৎপত্তি সম্পর্কে কিছু বলার জন্য। পাকিস্তান ও ভারত বিভক্তির পর পাকিস্তান পুনরায় পূর্ব পাকিস্তান ও পশ্চিম পাকিস্তান মিলে পাকিস্তান সংগঠিত হয়। পশ্চিম পাকিস্তানের অধিকাংশ জনগোষ্ঠী উর্দু ভাষী, অপরদিকে পূর্ব পাকিস্তানের অধিকাংশ জনগোষ্ঠী বাংলা ভাষী। অতঃপর প্রশ্ন জাগে যে পাকিস্তানের রাষ্ট্রভাষা কি হবে? পাকিস্তান সরকার পাকিস্তানের রাষ্ট্রভাষা উর্দু ঘোষণা করার পরপরই পূর্ব পাকিস্তানের জনগণ তাতে দ্বিমত পোষণ করে এবং বাংলা ভাষাকে উর্দু ভাষার পাশাপাশি রাষ্ট্রভাষা হিসেবে স্বীকৃতি দেওয়ার দাবি জানায়। এই দাবি না মেনে পাকিস্তান সরকার উর্দু ভাষাকেই পাকিস্তানের রাষ্ট্রভাষা হিসেবে ঘোষণা দেয়। এই ঘোষণার বিপক্ষে যে পূর্ব পাকিস্তানের জনগণ প্রাথমিকভাবে কঠোর আন্দোলন গড়ে তোলে পাকিস্তান সরকারের বিরুদ্ধে। এই আন্দোলনটি পরবর্তীতে স্বাধীনতা যুদ্ধের মাধ্যমে পূর্ব পাকিস্তান বাংলাদেশ হয়ে নতুন রাষ্ট্রের জন্ম নেয় 1971 সালে। এতে এটাই চিত্রিত হয় যে জাতিসংঘের 16তম SDG গোল, যা হলো পিস, জাস্টিস এন্ড স্ট্রং ইনস্টিটিউশন। স্বাধীনতা যুদ্ধটি বাংলা ভাষাকে রাষ্ট্রভাষা হিসেবে প্রতিষ্ঠিত করার জন্য আজীবন বাঙালি জাতির মনে ভালোবাসার প্রতীকী হয়ে স্থান পাবে। আমি আজ আরও এই অনুষ্ঠানে উপস্থিত হয়েছি আপনাদের মাঝে বাংলা ভাষা আন্দোলনের সচেতনতা গড়ে তোলার জন্য। পরবর্তীতে বাংলা ভাষা রাষ্ট্রভাষা হিসেবে প্রতিষ্ঠিত হওয়ার জন্য বাংলা ভাষার এই আন্দোলনটি ইউনেস্কো কর্তৃক দ্বারা স্বীকৃতি পায়, যা আন্তর্জাতিক মাতৃভাষা দিবস হিসেবে প্রতি বছর 21শে ফেব্রুয়ারিতে উদযাপিত হয়। বাংলা ভাষা আমার মাতৃভাষা হওয়ায় আমি খুবই গর্বিত, কারণ এই ভাষার ইতিহাস অনেক বীরত্বের এবং এই ভাষার সঙ্গে জড়িয়ে আছে লাখো শহীদের রক্ত ও প্রাণ। আমি আজ সকলকে আহ্বান জানাচ্ছি নিজ নিজ মাতৃভাষাকে শ্রদ্ধা ভরে উপলব্ধি করার জন্য। আমি এখানে উপস্থিত সকলকে আরো জানাচ্ছি যে বহু ভাষাবাদ ও সাংস্কৃতিক বৈচিত্র্যকে একে অপরের মাঝে তুলে ধরার জন্য, যার ফলশ্রুতিতে একে অপরের সাথে ঘনিষ্ঠতা বৃদ্ধি পাবে। ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you, Nusaiba, for that wonderful speech in your mother tongue.
And now you'll have 30 seconds to rate Nusaiba's speech. And wow, what a rich history the language of Bengali has. And no wonder it's called the language of selfless love. It's a language that was built upon not only the independence of Bengal, but the coming together of millions of people in order to try and support a cause that they believed in.
Yes. And those who are bilingual actually have the qualities of a global, like their qualities of global citizens are enhanced by their bilingualism. Boris, can you speak another language?
Yo sí puedo hablar en español. No lo hablo muy bien, pero sí lo entiendo más o menos de lo que he oído de mi familia. Essentially, I just said, I speak Spanish a bit, for my family.
Yeah, okay. Come on. Okay.
Now, moving forward, hey Van, I have personally never traveled abroad. I heard you went to China over the summer last year. Did you make any friends there?
Yeah, I still text them over WeChat and WhatsApp. I actually just texted my one friend from South Africa, and he'll be joining us today.
Wait, are you talking about Nathan? Nathan, who's a youth ambassador, youth empowerment activist, who's currently getting his master's in politics international relations at the University of Johannesburg, and who researches youth activism, identity politics, and Pan-Africanism? That Nathan?
Yes, Nathan Swartz. He's got a pretty impressive resume, and I don't think there's anyone more fitting to moderate our student panel today. Nathan, are you there? How are things in Johannesburg? Nathan.
Hey, thank you very much, Van, and thank you very much, Boris. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Well, just thank you very much for this awesome and amazing opportunity. I'm greeting you from sunny, well, not necessarily sunny, a cold evening in Johannesburg, South Africa. And I just want to say Sambonani, Dumelang, Goeienaand, and greetings from Johannesburg, South Africa. I am beyond grateful for this amazing experience to just share in my personal exchange experience, as well as just engage on youth activism and global citizenship. Even though we might not be physically with one another, the power of global citizenship is a movement that no virus or circumstance can stop. And I would say that my exchange experience has definitely showed me and taught me how to look at the world from outside of my country. I come from a community where both my parents are unemployed and disabled. Likewise, my community faces challenges like youth unemployment, gangsterism, substance abuse. And I believe that when I went on exchange to the US back in 2013, 2014, the biggest thing that I learned was that even though the world is filled with all of these various problems, we are able to effectively contribute to it by being active citizens. And you know, it's definitely an interesting time in history to be alive. Even though much of humanity is locked away, war and conflict still continues. Poverty and hunger still ravages many nations. Gaps of inequality across spectrums of race, gender, and class still exist. And our dearest Earth continues to grapple with this harsh negative influences that we as human beings have on our planet. And ultimately, we became the society that has lost touch with our real humanity. But it's not all gloom and doom just yet. And I believe that one group has stood up, and this is the youth. And the youth has definitely risen to the plate to take the future in the hands of themselves. Often it is said that we as youth, we tend to say that youth are the future, but we find a lot of adults and a lot of society still suppressing youth and youth opinion. And I'm so grateful for this particular platform, because this is a platform where we can effectively contribute and engage and bring forward the youth voice. Many people have silenced the youth's voice for the benefits of themselves to continue to destroy our society through things like corruption, bigotry, and toxic leadership. But youth activism has become a force like no other. If we look at leaders such as Malala and Greta Thunberg, are just two examples of leaders who actually show the power of youth, who have a collective vision to change their circumstance. In my country, South Africa, and in Africa, we have this philosophy that we're often taught and we're encouraged to live by. It's called Ubuntu. And Ubuntu simply means that I am who I am because of who we are. And essentially that stands for the fact that your existence, your actions, and the consequences of your actions are not solely independent to you, but you are ultimately connected or part of this interconnected purpose and system that affects everyone. And I cannot see a better example of this quality than in the power of global citizenship and the potential that intercultural learning can serve our humanity in this present moment and beyond. We can definitely change the world, maybe not in one instance, but one person at a time. And I just want to once again thank HISD for this opportunity. And I hope that through this particular discussion, that the audience will also get involved and the various stakeholders might also gain an interesting insight on what global citizenship is through the stories and experiences of this amazing group of young leaders on our student panel today. With that said, at this moment in time, I actually just want to give the opportunity to the panelists to just introduce themselves. Can we start? We'll start with Vincent.
Hi, my name is Vincent. I'm a senior at Bel Air High School. I'm representing EF Tours today. I've been on 2 trips with them. The first was called Grecian Odyssey. I went to Greece for a week. The second one was called Venice, the Alps, and Paris, where I went to Italy, Switzerland, and France for a week. And I can also touch on my experience with CIE as an exchange student in Spain for a month. And my favorite meal from my trips would have to be for my first trip, the Greek dish of pasticcio, which is similar to lasagna.
Oh, that's cool. That sounds really tasty, Vincent. Who do we have next on?
Hi, my name is Faith. I'm a junior and currently a rising senior in Energy Institute High School. I'll be representing AFS, and I've traveled with AFS for about 3 weeks in a program to Ghana. And I would say my favorite dish would be jollof rice and definitely the chocolate there as well.
Ooh, chocolate in Ghana. What are some of like the good flavors of chocolate in Ghana?
So there were like normal flavors like dark chocolate, but there was also like coffee, ginger, lemon, orange. It was really crazy. It was really nice.
Ooh, that sounds absolutely divine. Who do we have next on?
Hi, my name is Mia Garcia. I am a junior at the Houston Academy for International Studies. I went to the Pranic 10-day program in PECT, India, which was in Pune, India. I would have to say my favorite dish there has to be chapati, which is similar to tortillas.
Oh, cool. Mia, are those pictures behind you from your experience?
Actually, yes, they are.
They are so cool. So cool. Who do we have next on?
Hi, my name is Ethan Warren. I'm currently a sophomore at Carnegie Vanguard High School, and I am representing Amigos de las Americas. Last summer, I went to Azuero, Panama for 6 weeks, and I would have to say that my favorite meal there was probably the lentils, fish, and rice.
Oh, cool. Sorry about we're just experiencing some difficulties there. Let's kick this off with the simple question, and I'll have this question also thrown at the audience as well. Be sure to just comment in the chat. What does it mean to be a global citizen to you? Does anyone like to start? What does it mean to be a global citizen to you? You can give me a one line or a word.
I think that being a global citizen means to be culturally aware of your global surroundings.
Cool. So that sense of just being aware of where you come from, away from the environment that you grew up in, and just simply awareness in that regard. Do you have anyone else that would like to also add onto that in terms of what does it mean to be a global citizen?
So going off of what you said of being aware, I would say that being a global citizen means like willing to try new things and willing to learn, as well as having a respect of their culture and a knowledge of their culture as well.
So you'd say that being a global citizen, it's like taking risks and being a risk taker?
Yes, just willing to try new things and go outside your comfort zone.
I firmly believe that. I can remember that to be a global citizen or just to grow as a person, you often need to get out of your comfort zone, because that's essentially where you find growth, is in a space where you totally don't know what's going on. And that's exactly how culture shock also works in that regard. Let's go to Mia and Vincent.
I would also like to add that I think someone who's a global citizen really is aware of different cultures and how their actions affect people around the world.
Cool. That sense of that you and that actually touches upon the Ubuntu concept that I spoke about. that you are part of this interconnectedness system that you are essentially playing a role in. So as a global citizen, you're not solely independent, but you are fundamentally a part of a bigger purpose in that way. Mia, what about you? What do you think it means to be a global citizen?
For me, I would have to say being a global citizen means to keep an open mind, honestly. Whenever you're traveling or even like just doing things within your own community, really keeping an open mind and again, stepping out of your comfort zone and doing things that you wouldn't normally do, and just really embracing your surroundings and know the people who are around you as well.
And I'm sure that sense of when you embrace yourself with your surroundings and coming out of your comfort zone, I'm sure that there's a lot of challenges that one might face on exchange. Let me turn to Ethan. Ethan, what would you say are some of like the biggest challenges that you faced while on exchange, and how did you perhaps overcome those challenges?
So one of the biggest challenges I faced in Panama, which I'm sure everyone faced this problem as well, the language barrier. So how I overcame this was I continuously talked to my family, and I realized that they knew that my Spanish was not as good as theirs, obviously because they're native speakers. But yeah, I just continuously talked to them, and I just got over the fear of speaking in Spanish.
Oh, cool. So that sense of actually like engaging one-on-one with someone that speaks a different language somewhat helped you in that way? Was speaking to the local culture also, did it help you? Did you learn any slang?
I did learn some slang. However, I just, when you're not using it, just kind of fades away from memory.
Just
but
goes.
yes, I did learn.
It just goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Has anyone else experienced that sense of language barriers as being one of the challenges while on exchange?
So the language barrier was never too big of an issue for me due to the fact that in Ghana, one of the main languages was English. So it was a lot easier for me to be integrated into the culture and be able to speak to multiple people and things. However, there was something that was a little bit difficult, which was probably getting used to not using our left hand. Because in Ghana, it's seen as sort of disrespectful to use your left hand to eat or to do anything with that. They call it the toilet hand, using your left hand. So that was pretty hard to get used to.
That sounds very interesting, and I think I need to be very careful when I go to Ghana because I'm naturally left-handed. So I'm gonna be like, either have to just figure out the way to use my right hand or just be conscious of that. Thanks for sharing that, so that I know if I ever go to Ghana, I'll definitely take that into mind. What about the sense of you obviously, while you go on exchange, you have experienced this amazing thing and this amazing experience, and I'm sure there are a few things that you might have wished you knew before you went on exchange. And I think, let me throw this one out to Vincent. Vincent, if you could go back to yourself before your exchange and tell yourself, hey, I wish I knew this before my exchange, what would that be?
Yeah, well, let me start answering that by saying that one of the unique things about EF tours is that you generally go with a group of students from your school. So it was all people I knew and trusted. And so I really wish that on my trip, I would have gotten more out of my comfort zone and really pushed myself to interact more with the locals, because I think that's one of the most important part of going on an exchange.
I definitely agree with you. And I think to share on my personal experience, when I was hosted in Iowa on the YES program in 2013, 2014, one of the biggest things that I noticed was that exchange students who get hosted in the US always tend to form this clique amongst themselves. So they don't actually engage, but they would rather engage with each other as exchange students. And while that's a good support group, in my regard, I was like, no, let me go out there and just experience. And I think getting involved within the local culture is actually very important to building your cultural awareness and learning more about in that regard. So I'm glad that you shared that one. Is there anyone else that would like to share in terms of something that you wish you knew before you went on exchange?
Something that I wish I knew was that like I would try really hard to always be on top of everything. So I should have come up with a lot more I guess backup plans to things because on the way to the actual exchange, like to Ghana to meet up, I actually missed my flight, and so that caused me to
Wow.
like freak out and everything. But I ended up speaking to my advisors and them, and I realized that I can trust those people, and if I ever need a problem, I can go to them for that.
And I think what's vital to note is that sense that many exchange experiences and many organizations have a lot of like good support structures. And I'm glad that it was so easy for you to have that sense of support that while you're going through that little crisis, you were able to get support quick in that regard. What about the sense of, I think, let me first turn to Van. Van, do we have any responses for our first question in terms of what does it mean to be a global citizen from our audience members?
We will get back to you once we have the question in the chat.
Okay, no problem about that. Let us continue. One of the biggest things that I realize when it comes to our experiences as student ambassadors, as youth ambassadors, as well as former exchange students, is that sense that identity plays a huge role as being both a global citizen as well as just living life. And fundamentally, the question that I often ask is, how does our identity get influenced when we are while we are abroad? And I just want to ask that question to our panelists. Let me start with Faith. Faith, while you were abroad as an American person or as an American citizen, was there any part of your culture as an American that changed, or did you find yourself being more patriotic?
So I did find myself being a lot more patriotic in the sense that I felt more grateful for being in a place like America where I have so many opportunities and little things like that. For example, when I was out in Ghana, it's not as common to have hot water in every single building like you would in America. So that made me realize and sort of reflect on how much privilege and how much things I have that maybe people from other countries don't end up having, which made me a lot more patriotic.
Oh, that's very touching in that regard. Is there anyone else that felt as though um, being American changed, or was there a few stereotypes that might have been thrown out at you being an American?
So I would like to say that my experience was actually the opposite of Faith's. So when I went into Panama, I wanted to fully immerse myself like into their culture and community. And so I kind of just cut off my entire patriotic side. Like I didn't mention anything about the United States. If they asked, then obviously I told them. But other than that, I was strictly just in it for the experience. And so my host family constantly called me like a local or a Panameño. And so I think that was because I was so adapted to like my environment that they just felt comfortable with calling me that.
Did you feel as though that sense of being called a local and being so immersed in society, did it help you with the process of exchange, or did you feel more part of a community?
Yeah, I definitely did feel more part of the community, and being one with the community, it made time pass by faster because I felt such a connection with the people around me. And once that connection was created, it was like days became like more fun and I was learning more, and it was just an awesome experience.
That sounds absolutely amazing. I think one of the biggest things is the sense that when you go on exchange, I often tell people it's very difficult for you to sum up your entire exchange in one sentence or in one word or in one discussion. So fundamentally, you have your whole entire life. There's going to be parts where you're going to look back on your exchange and be like, I'm glad that this happened this way. Or sometimes you're like, I'm glad that this didn't happen this way. So that you're able to just learn more about yourself and get out of your comfort zone. Um, do we have any updates in terms of the responses from audience?
Yes, we actually have a lot. So one from Ebony Gill, who says, to be a global citizen, it means to take risk and learn from others and teach others and experience all kinds of cultures. Forrest, do you have any?
Yes, we do have another from, one second. Marina Hernandez, saying that being a global citizen is being culturally aware of all cultures around the world and supporting issues not just in your home country, but other countries around the world.
Gasper Sanchez says, I believe being a global citizen means being able to be one with your community and being able to expand to other communities. The thought is to be able to understand other cultures, just the overall aspect of understanding. Back to you, Nathan.
Thank you very much. I definitely agree with the audience in that sense of that you need to just understand different cultures. And fundamentally, I believe that when it comes to the practice of tolerance and having tolerance for different communities and different cultures, it goes beyond just tolerating a different culture, but fundamentally going beyond and wanting to understand, wanting to learn, wanting to experience another culture is very important in that regard. Would some of the panelists agree with some of the statements that were said by the audience?
Yes, I actually went with Ebony Gill to Pune, India in 2018, I believe. And oh my gosh, I had such a wonderful experience with her. She is so right. We even roomed together. She's so, like, everything she said was really on point as far as to be a global citizen means to take risks and learn from others, teach others, and experience culture exchange with an open mind. It is so important to take risks, especially in like third world countries, because there's so many things that are different, but also there's so many things that are very similar. So it's really just about stepping out of your comfort zone and taking in the cultural exchange.
I definitely agree with that. I think much of the time we are very fearful of change. And if we don't put ourselves out there, we never know what we are able to do and what we are able to achieve. Sometimes they speak when it comes to exchange, we often say that exchange is not a year in your life, but it is a lifetime in a year. Yes. And if you think about it in that particular regard, you can literally go on this experience. You can literally change who you are. Look at parts that you struggle and you fear with, and you fundamentally change your whole entire view of the world. Mia, that being said, how has your experience shaped the way you view the world, and where do you see your place in the world now?
I definitely view the world a lot differently. I definitely see myself more grateful for the education that I have. Education has been implemented in me my whole life as education is important. You have to go to college, you have to do good in school, you have to maintain a good GPA, you have to do this, you have to do that. So I really see myself as, and also encouraging others to do the same thing, because education is important. It's so important, especially for being a woman. Whenever I went to India, I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, like it's already hard enough to get an education there, and it's like 3 times, maybe even 100 times harder for a little girl to get education there. So whenever I came back, I was just so thankful for the opportunities I have at HISD. I go to an early college school, so I really see myself just encouraging others to pursue the same thing. Whenever I came to school, I was always telling people were like, oh, I'm lazy, I don't feel like doing, this project. I'm like, no, do it like now. Like I'll help you if you need to, do it now. And I really just want to keep on encouraging other people to do good in school.
And I definitely agree with you. That actually speaks to two of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. goal number 4 and goal number 5. Goal number 4 that speaks to ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promote long life learning opportunities for all. And goal number 5 that says that to achieve global equality and empower all women and girls. And I firmly believe, and I want to encourage you that as you now in your own community, while you still appreciate that sense of education, you still encourage other women to also appreciate that sense of education. Is there anyone else that would like to add in terms of how your experience has shaped the way you view the world?
Well,
Vincent, perhaps?
I would like to say that I really relate to what Mia had to say about education, because I found that on return from my trip, I became more interested in a different aspect of education. I became more interested in languages and cultures, even though I never really found it interesting before, just because I found myself as part of a larger community around the world, and I saw the ability that these topics have to connect me to those people.
Yeah, cool. Let's just take 2 minutes to also just take a few questions from our audience as well. Van, do we have any questions from our audience?
Yes, Nathan, you also appear to have some fans. There was one question asking if everyone in South Africa has an accent as cute as yours, and do you speak any other languages?
I am totally flattered. I speak English and Afrikaans. Those are the 2 languages that I speak in South Africa. South Africa actually has 14 official languages. But I don't think that Afrikaans is a really cute language. It sounds like German, and I don't think that's cute at all. But yes.
Could you give us a sample?
Goeienaand, my naam is Nathan Swarts en ek praat nou Afrikaans. That is, good evening, my name is Nathan Swarts and I'm speaking Afrikaans.
For all the ladies out there, there you go. And
You're welcome.
Nathan, do you have anything to say?
Do we have any more questions?
Yes. There was one question about owning your own culture and truth, and like how does that translate when you study abroad?
Would some of the panelists like to add on to that one? How do you own your own culture while studying abroad? I think this also speaks to that sense of being American abroad as well.
So with that idea, I would say when you own your own culture, I say you can educate people on how you live life, or just let people know how like it is where you come from, because learning something new is always great. So if they teach you things about their culture, you can teach them things about your culture.
Cool. Yeah, and fundamentally, I think that sense of being an ambassador is important, that you need to know that while you're in another place, you're representing your own hometown, your own community, your family, and everyone. And if you always remember who you are, you also have that sense of owning who you are, and you're actually proud of who you are while you're abroad. Do we have anyone else that would like to add on to that?
Well, I also found that it was all about a balance, because you don't want to push your culture in your face, in the face of other people, but also for many people you are the only American they may ever meet. So, you want to give a good impression and just respect their traditions, but not give up your own.
Funny story, I think one of the biggest things, I can remember I gave a presentation while I was in the US, and I was asked if I ride an elephant to school. And for some weird reason, I just was like, yeah, we definitely ride elephants to school. And I always had fun, but at the same time, there was that sense of I loved educating people about my community and about Africa as a whole. Fun fact, South Africa is a country. And because South Africa is a country, you often get this feeling of, okay, if you stay in Africa and you stay in South Africa, where in South Africa do you stay? And that viewpoint of that Africa is not a country, but Africa is a continent in actual fact, is one of the biggest things that I think one of the challenges that I faced while I was abroad in that case. Let's turn to, I just want to turn to the fact that being a global citizen also means that we need to welcome difference. And Faith touched upon that sense of when she was in Ghana, you couldn't really use your left hand because your left hand was seen as like a wrong hand in that regard. Was there anyone else that might have had like something that seemed like so out of the norm for you in your host culture that was like a real challenge for you to understand?
So for me, going to Panama, I did have set expectations. Not anything like out of the norm, like anything out of the norm, but I had expectations of what I was going to be put into, and I thought I thought that that everything would be quote unquote normal, or I guess similar to what I'm used to in the United States. But on the first day, I will never forget this. On the first day that I was there, at night after meeting my host family and getting to know them a little bit, we were having dinner, and then all of a sudden somebody just walks through the front door, and I'm like, "Yeah, who is this?" And they told me that that was their neighbor, and I figured out that everyone in the community leaves their doors open or their front doors open so that they can walk in and out of each other's homes, and just maybe sit down, have a conversation, share a meal, share an experience. And I feel like that's very important to be a global citizen because it shows unity in society.
Cool. And I think we're just gonna have time for just one more question for all of the panelists. And I wanna take this on in the current moment in time. In the light of this COVID-19 pandemic, I believe that our global culture has changed a lot. In your opinions as the panelists, what would you say, how has our global culture changed? And likewise, if you're thinking about the future of cultural exchanges, what innovative ideas would you give post COVID-19? Yeah.
I would say the post COVID-19, post COVID-19 would bring light to more unifying things such as social media, getting together on social media, doing more digital challenges, or even having more digital experiences abroad. And I feel like that would bring people together more, and it would cause people to be able to participate more abroad, not less of going abroad, but they can still have that experience, but just from their computers in their homes.
Yeah, fundamentally, we are all currently now on an exchange experience because I'm from South Africa, you guys are from the US, and we are ultimately sharing our culture in this way as well. Do you have anyone else that would like to add on to that?
I would like to add on to, yes, not being able to physically travel to the study abroad locations has altered the ability to see cultures and, beautiful countries firsthand. And everyone in general, I believe, has had a rough time being on pause, and it's been a difficult time to figure out exactly what is the next move. And even though we've lost the physical ability to travel, again, just like they said, we can still engage with online programs that teach cultures. And I feel for me, as well as so many other students, that we could share their study abroad experience with others as a way of teaching others what we have learned on our global experience.
And
I
thank you,
definitely agree
Mia,
with
for
you.
your great response, and thank you, Nathan, and all of our panelists. Now we're going to move on to our next speaker, who is David Zuhl, a rising junior from DeBakey High School, and David will be discussing the inequalities in our systems that students face on their path to becoming global citizens. Tell us what we need to know to help you fix the system, David. David, are you there? Boris, would you like to give his speech?
If only.
Oh, he's here. David, could you unmute yourself?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it's getting kind of dark here. Sorry. So, my name is David Zuhl. Welcome, everyone. And today I would want to talk about an essential human right that has been found underneath the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that sparked a generation of debate and has found itself to be the enemy to the natural sovereignty of any nation. The human right I'm talking about is freedom of movement. What does that mean? Simple. It means that any person has the right to move freely within the country they are lawfully within, the freedom to leave any country, and the freedom to enter the country of which they are a citizen. But why am I talking about this? It's because out of every student in the world, roughly 3.4% of those will ever eventually study abroad. To make matters worse, the minority students are so greatly underrepresented in study abroad programs. No minority population group even surpasses 11%, not the African American population, Hispanic, Latinx, or Asian populations. And even though these numbers in front of my face tell me that I should not travel abroad, I can't help but wonder why. Why can't a student like me travel? What obstacles stand in my way to becoming a global citizen? But I know the answer. I know how the current status quo has implemented systems that prohibit minority students from thriving. It is because to travel abroad costs anywhere between $18,000 and $36,000. And it is that price tag why students like me are stopped from attaining a global aspect. It is because of that price tag why students are rarely seen achieving any of the UN SDGs. However, our hope is not lost because we can challenge the status quo that has been killing us. Because I'm sure by this point you have noticed how the status quo perpetuates itself by convincing us that change is inconceivable, impossible, and unnecessary. And then suddenly it becomes conceivable, possible, and necessary. Take homelessness. It has always been a major problem and demonstrates how we haven't solved UN SDG 1, no poverty, 2, zero hunger, and 10, reduce inequalities. And now all of a sudden the capacity has been found to put large quantities of our homeless populations into hotel rooms. We're supposed to believe that something like this is impossible, but in moments like these, we can see that it is extremely possible. What's interesting is that a disaster achieves what activists are always trying to do, point out the contradictions. In the aftermath of something like this, who benefits when the status quo is so clear? And so you always have the winners of the old system pushing hard to reassemble it after it's shattered in front of our eyes. But the status quo is dead. And the rest of us are saying, let's go forward. Let's not go back. Let's go another way. This is the biggest illusion that gets shouted in moments like these. Now the contradictions are heightened, we at least have a chance to see what's broken and build something new. To me, the study abroad system has been broken. I believe that I can be the beginning of a new generation of students who will work to achieve the UN SDG goals of no poverty, zero hunger, a quality education, and reduce inequalities, because study abroad opportunities lay the foundations for students to obtain a global education and learn about the inequalities of different nations. But most importantly, study abroad programs allow students to create relationships with millions across the world. So, will you help me obtain my human right by studying abroad? Or will you be a winner of the old system, building back a system that has long denied the rights of the people and oppressed minorities?
Thank you very much, David, for that amazing speech.
You'll now have 30 seconds to rate David's speech.
And wow, exactly. Like, as David points out, traveling abroad should be for everyone. It shouldn't be restricted to just those who can't afford it. It should be available to anyone of all income levels, because traveling abroad opens up your eyes to the world, and it's truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
And to go even further, traveling abroad should also be an opportunity for those who are undocumented or those who don't have the necessary resources to go abroad. And I think that's a further push to talk to our leaders and those above us that make these rules and kind of these policies.
Of course. And now we're going to be moving on to our next speaker, who's a freshman from DeVakey High School. Leopold Hong is going to be talking about the inequality of access to healthcare across the world and the need to close this gap. This is a hot topic, Van. COVID-19 has been an MRI on an inequity in our society, and Leopold's here to talk to us about his findings. Leopold, you have the floor.
Leopold, are you there? Can you unmute yourself too?
Hello? Hello?
I'm going to charge my phone.
Hello?
10. It's also been thundering.
Could you say something?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Van Boris. But as we develop, a new system needs to be set in place. where new generations can flourish with people working in tandem. The current state of the world gives a true example of how the healthcare system has failed many in need. You might think this ongoing situation is dreadful or devastating, being that you can't go out and go hang out with your friends or go to internships or go to camps. But what if these circumstances was our way of life? Minus the electronics, mask, a sufficient home, food, or even filtered water. This holds true in many developing countries. This indifference is not the fault of one person, but the world collectively. We have set our future generations up for failure by constantly repeating ourselves and wasting time over petty disputes when a compromise can be reached. Why waste time building walls when you need bridges? We must have solidarity because we are only as strong as we are united when we, as weak as we are divided. J.K. Rowling said that. With that, we have made major leaps in improving maternal and child health care, yet at least half the world's population are still without medical help. Medical care should be accessible for everyone. It is a basic human need that is seen as a privilege but should be a right. Each year, more than 2 million children die from preventable diseases such as malaria, measles, tuberculosis, and HIV. Of those 2 million, 1 million of those children could be saved if enough money goes towards expanding immunizations. If this attitude is kept, we could make even larger strides and possibly eradicate all diseases that constantly rip children away from their families each year. For the US, it is currently 34th in life expectancy. In comparison, Japan is one of the highest. Why is there such a disparity between Japan and US? Japan has free healthcare. If we emulate successful countries like Japan, we can evolve and come closer to a world where proper measures can be taken against preventive diseases and plagues can be quelled sooner. However, I want to talk about the preparedness of the world. Humankind has survived the plague of Justinian, the Black Death, the Spanish flu, which brings me to today, the novel coronavirus. If we have gone through all these plagues and pandemics, we can certainly traverse the barriers that COVID-19 has and is currently throwing at us, and I praise that for us. But this situation should be acknowledged as a lesson to be learned and not ignored as it has been throughout history. This problem being that we use methods from the 18th century to keep us safe. Masks are only effective when everyone uses them. Social distancing is only effective when everyone follows them. All these methods are left at our hands and unbelievably outdated. We have technology at our literal fingertips and self-driving cars, but we can't seem to develop methods that will keep everyone safe. The current guidelines are good enough, but what the world needs is security. The guidelines will work, not by chance that everyone uses it or follows it, or by luck that you don't contract it, but by certainty that it works. Many more diseases like the coronavirus will emerge in the future, all over the country, but the preparedness of the world will determine whether the world will allow it to fester into an obstacle or cure it. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your patience. We are waiting on one final speaker to be able to join us.
All right, so it looks like Sammy is going to be our final speaker. Sammy, are you ready to present?
Hello?
Just one moment there, Sammy. Can hear you.
Can hear me or you can't?
Can, but we cannot see your video.
Okay, sorry about that.
We go.
Do I start my speech or?
Yes, you're all set.
Okay. Feminism. We see it everywhere. Social media, advertisements, and even on street corners that stretch miles and miles far. Feminism. The fight for women equality, to tear down harmful stereotypes about women and girls. This is great. This is amazing. The feminist movement is treading the fight for women equality, and it has been for several decades. But behind the posters and signs we see that read "My body, my choice," the future is female, we sometimes don't see the men and boys fighting for their equality. Take it like a man. He probably did something to make her mad. That's why she's hitting him. I've heard these phrases countless of times, and they always leave a bad taste in my mouth. And that got me thinking, why is it that people come to the conclusion that a man had to have done something wrong to deserve being beaten up? A study found out that men were predominantly portrayed in mass media as villains, aggressors, perverts, and philanderers, with more than 75% of all mass media portraying men this way. Influence has a lot to do with how we think, whether we're aware of it or not. A social experiment was done where a woman was abusing her boyfriend in public 2 years ago. No one intervened, and later they were asked why. Everyone responded differently, but the words all had the same meaning at the end. He must have done something to upset her. The boys' crisis, boys dropping out of school and committing suicide at higher rates. Most of these talks are held at colleges and universities, so they're trying to lower the number of male students dropping out of college by sending counselors to those who seem to need it. But I never hear these talks being held at high schools or middle schools. Many issues start during middle school and high school years, but are never addressed until much later. Male students are less likely to get help compared to their female classmates. So why is that? Like I said before, influence plays a big part in how we think, and media is always surrounding us. The negative stereotypes of what an ideal man should be and the negative generalization of men being shown in media influences them to deal with their feelings in isolation and to suffer alone, causing these pent-up emotions to be dealt with the worst ways possible. But that's okay, right? Because boys will be boys. How can we bring awareness to issues that men and male teens are susceptible to? Teachers and students can have programs dedicated to help bring awareness to men's health and issues prevalent in today's society. Encourage male students to talk about what interests they are passionate about and help them find career opportunities for them. And explain to them that it's okay to tell people that they feel sad, helplessness, or a little weak at some points, because that's why you're there. As adults and role models, it's important to be there to teach boys and girls about life and how it can be difficult at times, but there's always someone you can talk to. Fathers, mothers, guardians, teachers, counselors, aunts, uncles, grandparents. Show them that you care, because it only takes one person to turn a life around. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sammy, for sharing all of those words with us. We very much appreciate it. As some of you in the chat box noticed, that we did not do the poll voting for Leopold. So we are going to do the voting for Sammy first, since you just heard her speech. So you should see that now appear on your screen. So you've got about 30 seconds to do your vote for Sammy. And then immediately concluding that vote, we will move right on to a vote for Leopold, so that all of our candidates have a process here to make sure that people have voted for their speeches. They both did a great job, and we very much appreciate it. Okay, so moving right on. Thank you for your voting for Sammy, and we don't want to leave Leopold out. So you should see more voting for Leopold. So think back to all of his words and what he shared. So we've got just a few moments, and believe it or not, everyone, as Van might say, she's sad that the time of all of us spending this together for this event is coming to an end.
However, there is good news. The summit will continue, and it's your turn to take action and continue by joining one of the breakout sessions offered by
We're back.
the partners and the sponsors. I'll turn it back to Van and Boris and let them wrap things up.
Okay, so it is to my understanding, we have concluded with Sammy's speech and we have finished the voting for that. Sorry, the weather was really horrible here. We lost connection. The rain was horrible.
And this is why we need to address climate change, y'all. Let's see it. But as we were saying, our time with you has concluded. However, we do still have our breakout sessions. And Boris, will you talk about our breakout sessions?
Yes, so we've actually put the link to the breakout sessions in the chat room. Choose the one you'd like to attend and just click on the Zoom link. You'll be prompted to leave this webinar to join the session link you clicked on. And don't feel bad about leaving. We'll be right behind you.
And all of you have taken a big step towards global citizenship by participating in the summit today. Wherever you are, and no matter where you go, there are always those who think and see beyond the borders of their own country and culture, so-called global citizens.
Let's join them. Adopt a sustainable development goal that you are passionate about and take action today, starting in your own community.
Yes. And before we sign off, we want to leave you with a sense of optimism about where we stand today. While the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a reminder of the work we have left to do, they're also a testament to the progress we have already made.
The human race is no longer helpless in the face of plagues and pandemics.
And though COVID-19 is changing our world, history has taught us that where there is crisis, there's opportunity. It's just up to us to seize it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And cut it.
It has robbed us of lives and livelihoods. It has shaken the foundations of our world. But it has also reminded us that for all our differences, we are one human race, and we are stronger together. We may have different cultures and traditions, but we share the same planet. For everything COVID-19 has taken from us, it has also given us something, a reminder of what really matters, and the opportunity to forge a common future.
Hi, Ms. Gupta. You bring up an excellent point, and the way we are going to address that is we will weight the percentages and the votes. So it'll be totally fair, and we will publish all of the results. Okay? The winners of the scholarship will be announced on social media tomorrow. Excuse me. The winners of the scholarship will be announced on social media by Friday. Are there any more questions? Okay, guys. Thank you very much.